Hi everyone. All right, so I'm going to kick off. This webinar is being recorded, and I know a number of people reached out to ask me and Growing Foxes to share the launch recording with them because they're unfortunately unable to make it. In these COVID times, there's so many demands on our Zoom attention span. In this dynamic world, we've got to share our recordings and watch when we can. But I appreciate you all very much for being here today for the very, very exciting launch of the Growing Foxes partnership with the Western Cape Education Department to roll out a dynamic new scenario planning program in the grade 9 and grade 11 life orientation curriculum across the province. There's a number of districts that are going to be partaking in the program, and it's very much a phase 1, hopefully leading on to a much bigger scale up in the future. But it's a very, very important and exciting first step. So I welcome you all here. There are a few people I want to introduce before we kick off into the really nitty-gritty, exciting, sexy stuff of the launch, saying what the Growing Foxes program is all about. But just to introduce two very important members of our team from Growing Foxes before handing over to Ismail. I'm going to start with Leslie Roland, who's a partner at Growing Foxes and Mind with Fox, the consulting branch of our company. I'm just going to hand over to him just to introduce himself and to say how he's involved in the program.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mitch, and good day to everybody. It's a real pleasure, as Mitch has said, for us to be involved with the Western Cape government on what I also see as an incredibly important initiative, which is really bringing capabilities that have been the preserve of the corporate world to young people. And we see that these skills are very relevant because change is not the preserve of just one sector of society. Clearly, our young people need to know how to manage that. They need to be able to foresee the future and make decisions that are based on some robust kind of thinking. And we're happy to bring our firm's methodology to these young people. And it's going to be an exciting time. This is not our first time that we're bringing it to young people, but certainly on this scale. And we're really looking forward to seeing an improvement in their own view of the future. So it's really a wonderful initiative. And again, thanks to our sponsors.
Thanks, Leslie. And may I hand over to Chantel now, the Supreme Fox herself, who's been working with Clem Santa and myself for many years now, forwarding the philosophy and the methodologies underpinning Foxy thinking. Chantel?
Hi, Mitch. Thanks very much. It's a pleasure to be here and to almost, if I could say, be back in education. I started my career in education. I remember I always wanted to be a teacher from almost the year dot. And I think even working in business and facilitating with executive teams and boards, I think the teacher in me does still come out. But as Clem says, I'm coming full circle because I met him when I was still in education. We've worked together for 20 years and coming full circle back to some of our work back into the education system. And I think for Clem and myself, what we've found important in our 20 years and Clem even longer in terms of his work experience is that the ability to think is such an important skill to have. And it sounds ridiculous talking within education, well, that's what it does. It teaches us or gives us the ability to think. But so often when you have a look at a system and the design of a system, it becomes so caught up with subjects, knowledge, content, and it then sometimes doesn't leave us enough space to actually think. And I think it is a skill that we need to bring back. It's a capacity that we need to rebuild, and it's a capacity we need to build in business with executive teams and at board level, at country level. We've seen recently what's been happening in the country. How do we take ourselves forward into the future based on a current reality? And I think it starts when we're young. We need to start building that capacity when we are young, and there needs to be space in the school curriculum for the ability to actually think about your own future as you are progressing and developing and defining your own destiny. And in order to solve the challenges that, in particular, in our case, in Africa, we have today going into the future. So that young age starts at a time where you have enough subject knowledge, you have enough underpinning to start saying, let me connect some dots and let me think about the future. And that is why with Ismail, we have put it into the life orientation, because what we believe is it is a life skill, and it's a skill that you'll carry through and build from grade 9, grade 10, grade 11, grade 12 into university, if you go into tertiary, into the workplace, if you go into the workplace, all the way up to if you end up in an executive team somewhere or a leading team. So we think it's a very important starting point to bring this into life orientation, and we're very looking forward to co-creating with teachers within the school, with learners within the school, and with business who are also sponsoring the program. So thank you.
Thanks, Chantel. And you know, before I hand over to Ismail, you know, we started this conversation with Ismail in the Western Cape Education Department a few months ago, a number of months ago now. And you know, it was a melding of minds where we said, you know, this is such a great opportunity for us to bring in some innovation to life orientation and to really help young people, prepare them for the future world of work and the future different kind of careers that they're going to entertain, and the different challenges that they're going to face, to be frank. And Ismail and the Western Cape Education Department, you know, the conversation started on such a great foot to say, yes, absolutely, this is a very exciting initiative. And there's a great opportunity to roll this out. And Ismail has been incredibly foxy in that endeavor, working with us to say, how can we get this going? How can we roll this out? And so I hand over to you, Ismail, to represent the department.
Good afternoon to you, Mitch, Leslie, and Chantal, and to the colleagues from the Western Cape Education Department. I see quite a number of my subject advisors are in the session, and there are quite a number of teachers, and I expect a few more to be joining us shortly. First and foremost, let me just say that in this particular situation that we find ourselves, the precarious position that we find ourselves, where learners are coming to school on a rotational basis, and I've just seen the latest statistics on 80% of our primary schools have decided to go on a rotational timetable and not have all the learners in school every day. And so that leaves us with major challenges from the teaching perspective. And so what have we got left for the academic year? And so our focus in terms of life orientation is to ensure that we develop skills in our learners over the next couple of months. There is going to be a challenge in terms of dealing with all the content and trying to complete the annual teaching plan. And therefore, my focus with our teachers, with our subject advisors, is to ensure that we develop skills. And with the Growing Foxes program, we are bringing those skills to our learners. We're talking to grade 9s, which is a particular group of learners that need to find direction very quickly, because they need to choose subjects for grade 10 and for the FET phase if they're going to remain in school. On the other hand, we're looking at grade 9s transitioning to the TVET colleges and following an NCV program. And so how do they go? What are their mindset in terms of ensuring that they know where they're going to be in the near future? And so with the Growing Foxes, we want to unlock that thinking process. We want to get them to start really focusing on their future. And through this particular program, we want to ignite that thinking on the part of the learner to try and work a pathway for him or herself as we move forward. The fact that we have sponsors on board like Nedbank and the MTO group means that the corporates are interested and are happy with the program that we've initiated between ourselves as WCED and Growing Foxes. So that in itself will tell you that this is an important initiative, and we are on the right path in terms of trying to get the message to our learners. We're starting small, but the idea is that we want to go across the province and engage with every grade 9 and grade 11 learner in this province. And so Leslie, Chantal, and Mitch, you guys have your work cut out, because we're not only going to be focusing on the 7,000 learners that we're focusing on initially. We want to expand that to every learner in this province. So from our side, we are happy to be engaged with you in this process and in this program, and we're looking to strengthen it going forward. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ismail. All right. Let me just, need to just reshare. There we go. All right. Can I just ask quickly, are the Ismail, Leslie, all good? Can you see the agenda?
Yes, we can.
All right. Okay, so this is just a rough agenda of how we're going to work through the launch. And, we're then going to definitely come back to a few of you to ask some questions and engage with us. But, before I go on, I just want to go back to this point and stress what Ismail really highlighted, that, in many ways, this couldn't be done without the fantastic support of our sponsors in Nedbank that have kindly offered to financially sponsor 5,000 students, and the MTO group have kindly offered to sponsor 2,000 students in the George area. And between them and their corporate support for our program, it's really showing the importance of corporates coming to the table to say, right, this is our pipeline of skills. How can we be involved in education? How can we be involved in developing the youth such that we have a more foxy, dynamic, entrepreneurial workforce, and all together makes Africa a better future. So in terms of the agenda, we started off with the introductions. We covered that base. Now I want to then work through, why this program is so necessary. And that's because we live in such a dynamic world. I want to then touch on some education scenarios that we've developed last year with various key stakeholders across the education sector, across multiple different countries, principals, teachers, ministers of education, to kind of see what does the future of education look like as we go towards 2030, and also function as an example of what a scenario planning exercise is all about. What is scenario planning and why is it valuable? Why are we teaching young people this skill? Then going to look at the Growing Foxes program, a little bit more detail, start off by looking at what is its core theme, and what are we trying to achieve, and what is this philosophy of thinking with the mind of a fox? What is all that? What is that all about? Then we're going to go into some more granular detail about how the program's actually going to work, and what are the different elements contained therein, how we're going to run the training and the actual running of the program, and then touch on a little bit of feedback that we've got, because Growing Foxes hasn't come out of thin air. We've been around for a few years now. We started in 2018. A number of schools across South Africa, in Australia, in Ethiopia, Zimbabwe, and the UK have all had exposure to our program, and we've got some great feedback from them. So this isn't something that's has no track record. It's got a serious track record behind it. I want to share with you some of the thoughts from some of the students, and then finally pass on to our sponsors to have a word in terms of why they wanted to get involved and what they see the future of education looking like in the future of this program. All right, let me kick off. So COVID-19 has shown us what a dynamic world we live in, and how things can come out of the blue and completely change the status quo, change what we consider normality. But this covers things way beyond COVID as well. The rapid uptake and advancement of technology is fundamentally changing how we live and work. A launch like this is only possible through the wonder of technology. And that's just touching on the surface. Our platform that we've developed, our web-based platform, has all sorts of functionality which really advances the educational offering that young people are exposed to. But then you think of social tensions around the world. If you think of climate change, if you think of politics and economics, there's so many different factors that come together to influence ultimately a very complex, very uncertain and a dynamic world. Now, if that's the world we live in, and if that's the world young people are going to be entering into, then we need to match that dynamism with developing their dynamic thinking ability. We can't throw them into this world with a very singular, limited mindset, with the blinkers on, and say, right, go out and survive and thrive. We're setting them up for failure. So what Growing Foxes has tried to do, and now the Western Cape Education Department partnering with us in this endeavor, is to try and develop dynamic thinkers, develop the ability to be more agile and adaptable in your thinking, to say, listen, I'm not sure how the future is going to play out. How can I entertain different scenarios to make sure that I'm resilient through adaptation? And that's ultimately what Growing Foxes is all about, and what we're trying to do by developing dynamic thinkers and develop this Foxy approach. So the education scenarios that we've developed from Growing Foxes happened over the course of last year, when education was thrown into a tailspin with COVID-19 and the global pandemic. And we got together around 200 key stakeholders in education, ministers of education, principals, teachers, students, the corporate sector that are going to be employing young people. And we got them together over a period of 2 weeks to work through our web-based platform and to answer a series of questions and seriously engage in what the future of education looks like to 2030, which is just under 10 years away now. But it's very important to lift our heads and say, where is education going, and are we preparing young people for the world of that future? Together, they went through our methodology, the same methodology that the young people are going to be working through in our program, and they identified two fundamental key uncertainties that are going to shape the future of education. One is about the relevance. How relevant is education? Is it relevant to the world that young people are going to be entering into? Is it relevant to the future world of work that young people are going to be entering into? And if not, what does that look like? How irrelevant is it? And then on the other dimension, the x-axis, they looked at the culture of openness to change amongst educators. And this is saying, people in the education space, is there a closed mindset that is resistant to change, or is there more an open mindset, or will there be a more open mindset that says, listen, there's certain elements that need to evolve, there's certain elements that need to change, and we are open to that journey. So from this, you create 4 different possible scenarios. One, the best case scenario of bad grades, saying, education coming together to say, we're going to have a really highly relevant education, and it's going to be made up through a widespread culture of openness to change. It's going to be an enabling environment that is technologically relevant and characterized by innovation. And hopefully through initiatives like this, education will be heading in that direction. If education is highly relevant, but it's epitomized by a culture of resistance to change, we may take 1 step forward and 2 steps back, where every inch of innovation is fought for, and while the system is evolving, the pace of the change is slow. Or if they have a culture of openness to change, teachers are excited and open to change, but the continuation of a quite irrelevant education model means that we're barking up the wrong tree. We have tacked on technology innovation with limited capacity and misguided design, where students are rather an afterthought than being center stage to what we're doing. And then the worst case scenario, which we're all trying to avoid, is a culture of resistance to change amongst educators and an irrelevant education. And this is controversially called a plucked ostrich, with the head in the sand, and plucked because it has nothing left to give, whereas a very traditional system with little innovation and not meeting the needs of the future world of work. And what's exciting is that being part of this launch today and being part of this Growing Foxes initiative, we're very much trying to steer education towards being highly relevant and epitomized by a culture of openness to change. So how do we develop dynamic thinkers? Well, we have a dynamic program to do that. So as Leslie and Chantal have touched on, Growing Fox has emerged out of a company called Mind of a Fox, work with Chantal Elbury and Clem Santa, myself and Leslie and various others that work with corporations or corporates and organizations and governments and supranational bodies to look at their future, to say, you know, how are you prepared in terms of your strategic thinking ability to manage the uncertainty that you face? We took the learning that we've found over that process of more than 20 years working with scenarios, so executive teams and boards, and said, well, there's a dearth of strategic thinking ability that we now need to develop. We need to develop this dynamic thinking at a much younger age. And so we built 30 years of experience in strategic thinking into a dynamic interactive learning experience. And the core of that is very much our technological platform, which we built from scratch for this very purpose in mind. But that is supported because we understand we live in a very unequal society in South Africa by a textbook that matches the dynamism of the platform. Combines beautiful design, innovative technology, sound methodologies, and imaginative thinking. And most importantly, tying in with that relevance that is very, very important, engaging original content that is tied to real world subject matter. So when students work through this program, or when learners work through this program, they're going to be seeing things that are happening in the world around them and applying that to the lessons that they're learning. All right. The core theme of the program, you know, what is it ultimately trying to do? And it's ultimately trying to help learners answer this question, which is a question that, you know, dominates their thinking. And it's, where do they see themselves in 10 years' time? You know, the age-old story, what do you want to be when you grow up? And this is a very difficult question to answer for young people. They either get influenced by what their parents want them to do, they get influenced by what their friends think that's cool, or they get, you know, consumed by passion that they have at the when they're young, which doesn't necessarily transpire into a full career or to a longer term goal. So it's a very difficult question, and we are trying to provide a framework, a methodology that will help young people tackle this question in a much more robust and serious and effective way, to give them the tools to be able to answer this question. But with the proviso that life will throw them curveballs, and they need a resilience through adaptation to be able to survive and thrive. And that's why we're building the ability to use scenarios. So what are the 3 learning outcomes from the program? You know, answering that question from that kid in the back of the class, say, you know, why are we doing this? There are 3 core learning outcomes. 1, provide a framework through which learners can explore how to set direction for their future. Okay, it's what I was touching on earlier, around providing them with the tool set that they're going to answer that question of where do they see themselves in 10 years' time, and founded on a robust methodology that has guided the strategic thinking of the biggest corporations around. Second learning outcome, create awareness of the environment around them and how it is changing. It's vitally important that kids, when they're in school, aren't just consumed with certain course material, but rather are opened up to the world around them, and importantly, how it is changing, because it's changing rapidly, and they need to have that awareness such that when they, you know, enter the workspace, when they enter the education, the tertiary education space, they're much more familiar with the sensitivities around what's happening in their world. And then finally, the third learning outcome, develop agility, adaptability, and anticipation in their thinking. And this is really boring out that concept of thinking with the mind of a fox, to say, how can I make sure that no matter what life throws at me, I can adjust my thinking so that I thrive in the face of uncertainty. So these are the kind of 3 core learning outcomes that we're trying to develop in this program. So where does it fit in? So when we designed this program, we thought very hard about, you know, how do we make sure that it isn't treated as something that is entirely extracurricular, an extra tack-on innovation that will feed towards that barking up the wrong tree scenario that I mentioned earlier. So we thought, where are those strategic touch points for learners? Where are they really, you know, grappling with that strategic question of what is their future going to look like? And we identified 2 areas. 1, grade 9. when learners are choosing their subjects. It's the first big strategic moment in their life where they say, okay, it's now in my hands and my control to look to the future and say, what do I want to do? What do I want to be? And how do I feed that into the decisions around subject choices that I make today? So that's why we paired it with the life orientation curriculum, grade 9, with the Western Cape Education Department, as well as in grade 11, because grade 11 is the second big strategic touch point in high school for young learners. And that's because they're choosing their tertiary education or their vocational training or their gap year or their career options after school. What are they going to do after matric? And that's another big a strategic moment. And so that's why we're embedding the Growing Foxes program and the life orientation curriculum for grade 9 and grade 11. And it has a full curriculum alignment. There are a number of lessons throughout the program which we've tied directly to the life orientation curriculum for maximum relevance with LO. So what is the model that we've used in terms of bringing together the various stakeholders? Well, Growing Foxes has a unique set of skills in terms of our proprietary methodologies, in terms of our technology that we use, and in terms of the content that we generate. But we would be nothing without the expert facilitation of teachers. You know, we need to enable an educational model that allows teachers to do what they do best, which is ask those difficult questions, moderate learner behavior, and get them engaging with a curious mindset to the program that they're tackling. And so we've developed a third model where we bring to the fore our technology, our thinking, our methodology, and our content. The teachers bring their expertise in terms of facilitating the learners through the program. And then obviously the students, the learners, they're the ones that need to bring in and engage and not just be passive consumers of the education that they're receiving. So we've partnered this way to bring all of the different relevant areas of the stakeholders together for a really innovative model. And I've added an extra ring around that because obviously, you know, this is critically important to partner with the likes of the MTO Group and Nedbank to try and help financially support this model such that it is sustainable going forward and enabling this environment that young learners are going to be entering the world of work. All right, I'm going to take out my headphones to make sure that you can hear this next video. There are two special characters that feature on our Growing Foxes program called Alice and Bob, and their history originates in the world of intelligence, in cybersecurity. When you're trying to encrypt messages, practitioners and theorists talk about sending a message from A to B and how to encrypt that message. And they often then use the names sending a message from Alice to Bob. And so we created two Fox characters to really put together as an engaging content offering for the students or the learners so that they can get really excited, get curious, to then want to dive in further. And it just offers them an opportunity to see some production value equivalent to what they see in the world of entertainment in their classroom. So let me introduce you to Alice and Bob.
Is this thing on?
Oh, my word.
Growing Foxes is a live learning platform that develops strategic intelligence. In essence, thinking the future.
It seeks to do what it says on the can. Grow foxes. Agile, adaptive, anticipatory thinkers.
The kind best prepared for a rapidly changing 21st century world.
The humans behind Growing Foxes
Include top strategists and intelligence theorists.
and their platform has 5 parts. 5.
Awareness, intelligence, synthesis, decision-making, and reflection.
Do foxes reflect? Are you a fox?
Cut. That's a wrap.
I actually thought we should finish off with, and may the fox be with you. Yeah, it's a Star Wars thing.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Bob, you're still in shot.
So these two Fox characters, as irreverent and witty as they are, featured throughout the program's content and work with the teacher to help facilitate the learning offering. And I'll touch on how that happens in a moment. So what are the core elements to the program, or what are the core elements of Foxy's thinking? Well, really it is distilled down to 5 essential pillars. First pillar is about awareness. It's about developing awareness of the world around the learner and how it is changing. And there's a famous Irish proverb that says, if you want to go from A to B, the first thing to work out is where A is. And that's what the first step is all about, developing contextual understanding of their current environment before they start looking to the future. The second pillar is about gathering intelligence. As you look to the future, you can see quite a hazy picture. And so it's important to try and distinguish between the certain predictable elements, things that you can count on, and that which is unpredictable and uncertain. And so the intelligence pillar is about making that distinction. Then once you've identified those uncertainties, you then need to say, well, if I'm unsure of how they're going to play out, I need to develop some scenarios around that. And that's what the third pillar is all about. It's about synthesizing that information that you gathered from the intelligence pillar, and then building out a set of scenarios that the learner can take forward in their life after school to say, you know, these are the different ways the future could play out. Am I prepared for each one of these eventualities? And finally, what is the value of these scenarios unless it then feeds back into the decision-making of the learner? So ultimately, the fourth pillar is around decision-making and ensuring that that decision-making is agile, adaptable, and anticipatory in line with the dynamism of the world around them. And then finally, to have the learner reflect on their meaning of winning and what is their definition of success as they look to the future and say, you know, where do I see myself in 10 years' time? What does success look like? What are some of the markers that would help them attribute the fact that they're on their way in life, how they saw it playing out? So each one of these pillars is introduced by Alice and Bob to get the learner engaged, excited, curious, and wanting to dive in further. Those then 5 pillars are then broken up into 10 separate lessons. In the awareness pillar, it starts off with context, scope, players, developing a contextual understanding of the defining characteristics of their world, looking at the defining parameters of their focus in terms of their scope. What are some of the areas that they need to focus on in order to, you know, distill the most important elements to their future? And then who are the key players that will have an influence on them one way or another, whether that be people, organizations, teachers, parents, fellow students, sports teachers, etc. Then in the intelligence pillar, it's all about distinguishing between the certainty, the rules of the game, the certainties you cannot ignore, and the key uncertainties, the important but unpredictable elements that have the potential to shape the world. You know, COVID-19 pandemic being a massive key uncertainty. It was very important and has ultimately shaped the world, but we weren't sure how. Then synthesizing that information into a set of scenarios, which are plausible stories for how the future may play out. Then moving on to the decision-making pillar, which starts off with an ethical compass, which in our experience, interestingly, is the section that the learners enjoy most, because I think young people today are very, very passionately involved in things like social justice, in the environment and climate change, and it's incredibly exciting to see. So before they start looking at options and decisions, they say, what are some of those non-negotiables, those red lines that I'll never cross that guide my ethical thinking? Then they look at what are some of their possible career options and what are some of the decisions they need to make today in order to try and drive progress towards those careers. And then finally, as I mentioned, reflection, which is looking at the meaning of winning, their definition of success. So these are the 10 lessons that constitute the program. Now, let me give you an overview of what a lesson looks like. And this applies for both the technology platform offering, as well as the textbook offering that complements it. After they've engaged with Alice and Bob and they've given them an overview of what the pillar is like, they then dive down into the core concept. This is tying in, as I mentioned earlier, context, scope, players. Each one of those are concepts. So they start off by engaging with videos and case studies that explain what that particular step in the methodology is all about. And they can't do anything else until they first engage with that core concept. They're then given opportunity and freedom to then explore the different elements that play out of that. One is the intelligence feed. Now, this is a live intelligence feed created and curated by Growing Foxes, highlighting the core concept and current events as they unfold. And this is bringing that dynamism that I was speaking about earlier to the fore. It's not a stale old textbook, it's something that's alive and changing every single day. And it's incredibly great feedback to see a number of classrooms that I've been in across the country, and to see the joy on their face when they see that that intelligence feed is being updated while they're in the classroom. It's very exciting for them. Then they can move down the rabbit hole. Now, this is for the inquisitive. This is for the curious that want to take that core concept just that little bit further. And in that, we have videos of encouragement from successful young adults who have applied the concept to their lives. I'll show you in a minute. We did a series of interviews with a number of young learners that are now in the workspace or an academic space that are across a diverse number of areas or work. And we get them to reflect on their journey from school to where they are today. Then the learner engages with the core concept, applying it to their own life and to their own personal future. And we have a fantastic room that divvies up the answers, virtual room that divvies up the answers, and gets the opportunity for learners to see the answers from others and upvote them and share on them and engage with them, as well as getting the teacher or facilitator to weigh in. Then they have a self-assessment space. This is a journal feature that they have as ongoing throughout the program, where they can jot down all of their strategic insights along the way. And then there's an opportunity for the conversation to go a number of different ways, where the facilitator can add discussion topics for ongoing interactive closed group discussion to broaden their thinking. So if, for example, they're working on current context, the teacher might want to add a discussion topic around the Black Lives Matter movement or climate change or something happening with COVID-19, something relevant that ties the lesson concept that maybe is not part of the main lesson, but is an opportunity to just stretch that thinking in another way. So this is a basic lesson structure, and it's curated into the ability of working through it in about 45 minutes in terms of the content that's on there. But I want to show you a few examples so you get a feeling of the kind of content that's on the platform. I'm going to start off with an example of one of the videos in the core concept for the scenario lesson. And this should also function as a bit of an explainer around what scenarios really are.
Scenarios are stories, symbols. In strategy, they're plausible stories of how the future may play out. Strategy is originally a military term, so let's use this example. A general is preparing for battle. Now, she's convinced the enemy will be waiting in a field a few kilometers away, and she's willing to bet the lives of her soldiers on that. If that is the case, and her army is super prepared for it, then great. Victory, surely. But what if the enemy is not where she thinks they are? Trouble. Instead, the general should think through different possible stories about where the enemy may be and what they may be planning. They could be preparing to outflank her army to the right, or drive her army towards a river and trap them, or even launch an ambush that evening as the soldiers are sleeping. Thinking through plausible scenarios will allow her to prepare a strategy for each possible event, thereby being proactive as opposed to reactive. However, it would be counterproductive to spend all her energy preparing for a space invasion by kamikaze flying pigs singing karaoke to Beyonce. That's just not plausible. Pigs don't like Beyonce. We naturally think about the future. It's important, however, not to get stuck on the idea that there's only one way it may play out. Instead, think like a fox. Prepare for a range of possible futures. Be agile, adaptable, and anticipatory.
So that's an example of one of the videos on the platform. Try to keep it as short and as condensed as possible to capture their imagination, to capture their excitement and curiosity, but also give them some really valuable information that they can take forward. In terms of the intelligence feed, what does that look like? series of articles and short snippets, short bites that we partner with Twitter on in terms of bringing that to the fore. And this is a really dynamic element to the program, applying the lesson concept to things that are happening in the world around them. And then I'd like us to just jump down one of the rabbit holes for a minute. The video is about 4 minutes long, but I think it's an important overview from some young people that are about 25, 26 at that process, that outcome of the question, where do you see yourself in 10 years? They are now 10 years on from learners that were in that position, and they reflect on what they wanted to be when they were younger and the different paths that they have taken. And I think it stresses the importance of scenario planning generally and dynamic thinking. But I think it also serves to show, you know, how important this program will be for a lot of young people.
Is that concealer?
Concealer.
Nice. How do I look? Do I look
It's
like
it's as good as it's ever gonna
Denzel?
get, right?
A young Denzel, dude. Young Denzel. Is this thing on? Are you gonna ask me questions?
Yeah, I will. But if you want to just rip.
Hello. If you're reading this, I am a billionaire. How I did it was simple. And the camera's there, right?
Yeah, so that's the one thing. If you can speak into the camera, so I'll put my face on it.
Okay, I can start anytime.
Yeah.
Okay. When I was young, I didn't know what I wanted to be, but I knew that I wanted answers. And I think that's all you really want at that stage. You want to know how the world works. So I chose a career that could help me understand how the world works so it could work for me and what I wanted to achieve when I found out what that was. So being able to think and being able to understand and digest knowledge was the pursuit from the beginning, and it's currently still the same mission. Hi, my name is Pinda Dube. I am a commercial and tax attorney working for a global auditing firm.
I had a variety of dreams when I was younger. As always, I thought I would be the wife of a football player. I don't know why. Didn't think that through very well. I thought that I would become a doctor. And then I realized I'm terrified of blood and sick people, so that wasn't going to work out. And then as I moved into high school and just started understanding more about careers, I thought I would become a lawyer, actually. I was going to become an attorney. Yeah. Are people going to believe my age if I say it? Okay. My name is Neo Petse. I am 27 years old, going on 28. And I work as an organizational development practitioner in the public sector. Wow, okay. that's a very funny question, because when I was younger, I actually wanted to be a dentist. You know, I was always fascinated by, you know, the dentist offices with the big chair and all of the equipment. And I also used to frequently visit the dentist because, yeah, I eat a lot of chocolate. Hi, everyone. My name is Priti Mubaiwa. I'm currently a PhD student at the University of Cape Town, doing a PhD in public law, focusing on women's rights. And I also work part-time for the Africa Resource Center. It is a Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation initiative focusing on public health supply chains in Africa.
My name is Kieran Ortlip. I'm a software developer and a founder of a software development company. We're not industry specific, so we don't focus on one industry, we focus on any industry, and our main goal is to solve problems. My business partners and I studied our masters in electrical engineering at WITS, and during that time, we started just looking into a lot of data projects and stuff like that. We just found that there's a lot of stuff out there that's really interesting that we wanted to get involved in. And as we started looking and speaking to people in industry and everything, we saw there was a huge potential for us to get into industry, start our own business and do projects that we thought were cool. So that's actually how it all started. We went out into industry, we started speaking to guys, we started getting small projects and everything. And from that point, we started seeing in industry where there were pain points for these businesses. So what we kind of found was, when we look at small and medium-sized businesses, they can't go to these huge companies to go and develop all of their products and help them create new apps and ideas. And that's the kind of niche space that we saw we could get into. And we started getting into there, and we realized how cool these projects are, because you have a lot of small businesses that are really dynamic and trying to solve real world problems, and they need guys to help them create the tech for it. And we were those guys, and that's really how the whole company started and kicked off.
So I think it's a great expose in terms of how your life could take different paths. Something that you wanted to be when you were younger might not materialize, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you failed one way or another. Life could happen and you find something else that you're passionate about or excited about, or meet some friends at university and start your own business. So how do you play out these scenarios and make sure that you're prepared for changing your life accordingly? And these kind of videos feature throughout the platform on the Growing Foxes program, tied to all the rabbit holes, and we ask them questions in line with the various concepts that they engage with. Context, what was your context when you were in high school? Players, who were some of the main people and organizations that influenced your decisions along the way? What are some of your options and decisions as you look to the future? What was your meaning of winning? And get them to reflect on that. I think it's incredibly valuable for young people, young learners, to see people that are not a million miles away from them in age share insights about their journey and make it really relatable. So I just want to touch on just a short snippet of feedback before we end, highlighting how important it is to think with the mind of a fox. So we run this program with hundreds or thousands of students across South Africa, the UK, Australia, Ethiopia, and even some in Zimbabwe as well. And we've asked them, we do a series of questions at the end after they've worked through the program to get some feedback, to get some opportunities to improve. And one of the questions we asked is, do you think it is important to think like a fox? And there was a resounding response from all the students, with 96% of them saying yes. And I think foxiness is a very natural ability that we're born with in many ways. And through different experiences that when they're young, could get drummed out of them. But it's exciting that the Western Cape Education Department and Growing Foxes are working together to try and bring that foxiness to the fore, because it's a critically important skill as we look to the future. So just touching on how it will run, it's as easy as 1, 2, 3, really. We're going to be training the teachers and training them as facilitators. We're going to be giving them the content material. We're going to be giving them the methodologies and guiding them through that process of how they can facilitate the program, how they can ask the right questions, how they can engage with the students on the right level and help them in that journey. Facilitators then register the students. If it comes to the web-based platform, it's as easy as a name and an email address, so nothing too complicated. And then finally, the students and the facilitators work through the program together. And we, it's difficult in these COVID-19 times, and that's why it's brilliant that this has a strong technology base to the offering. But in terms of the original design, it's very much focused around a blended learning model. How can you leverage the best that technology has to offer in terms of its convenience and its ability to generate and produce amazing content with a world of information, but tie it with the value of face-to-face learning, of engaging with teachers, engaging with peers and fellow learners in a much more organic sense, where discussions can go various ways. And so we provide facilitated lesson plans for in-classroom and virtual lessons for the teachers. So I'm going to leave it there in terms of what we want to say. And I want to leave you with that message of may the fox be with you. I think we will definitely open up for a few questions. But before I do, I want to just give an opportunity to Tumeleng from MTO Group just to say a few words in terms of why they decided to get involved in the program. Tumeling, maybe just on mute there.
Unmute and
there we
should
go.
I show my face?
It's up to you. Up to you.
I'm not too ugly. I'm
There we go. Fantastic.
happy to show my face. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Itumeleng, as you have been told, and I represent the M2O group. And to those who don't know the M2O group, we are one of the leading role players in the forestry or timber, in agriculture, manufacturing, training, and ecotourism sectors in South Africa. And our operations, they span from the Cape to the Mpumalanga regions. And we chose to support and partner with the Growing Foxes program because we believe in its sustainability. And I'm referring to it as a program versus project because we believe that projects have a start and an end date, whereas a program, develops in perpetuity. So our ethos as a company is that we are transformative, we're committed, and we are proudly South African. And we also subscribe to transforming the lives of our stakeholders towards a shared future of growth and sustainability. And, in short, we believe in growing today for tomorrow. So when one of the partners, Leslie, who, and this I say with pride, was my boss from a previous life, approached me about about supporting the program, I told them that, as a company, our focus is on education, and also it's towards upskilling teachers and learners in ICT skills, with the ultimate objective of improving the learner performance. However, when he explained what the program was about and what it endeavors to achieve, for us as a company, partnering and supporting this program was a no-brainer, because once again, it dealt with building the capacity of young people. So to quote our CEO, Greg Woodbridge, who is also in full support of, of the program, whenever he refers to the development of the youth, he says, I quote, young people, as we all know, are our future leaders and require continuous nurturing, guidance, and empowerment. This speaks to the sustainability not only of the corporate world, but of our society as a whole, close quote. So that, in a nutshell, should tell you why, as a company, we decided to support the program. And once again, finally, congratulations to the Growing Foxes in partnership with the Western Cape Education Department. And most importantly, congratulations to the learners that are going to benefit from the program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tumeling, and thank you very much for your support and your sponsorship. I think it's going to make a massive difference in a lot of young people's lives. I'm going to open up if there are any hands, if people want to raise their hands to ask a question. Otherwise, Ismail, is there anything else you want to touch on and add?
Just to confirm with you and with our teachers, firstly, let me just say thank you to those teachers that have engaged with us this afternoon. Unfortunately, as I said at the beginning, we cannot, at this point in time, share it with all the schools in the province. But your school has been identified, and therefore we're looking to support you. And remember, the program is in line with the annual teaching plan, so it's not an add-on to the curriculum as such, but rather something that speaks to what we're doing in the classroom. And the fact that Mitch is able to provide the support online means that you can go right into the classroom and share and use that as a lesson. So it's about strengthening what you're doing in the classroom, strengthening the teaching methodology, your pedagogy in the classroom, and for our learners to benefit from this particular experience. Ultimately, it is about developing their skills with the support of the Growing Foxes program.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ismail. See, there is a hand up from Haley, so I'll allow you to talk.
Haley. Hi, Mitch. Thank you for inviting me to this. It definitely speaks to my soul. Just a quick question on language and tech barriers. Obviously going into underprivileged schools, so obviously language barriers, is there any kind of plan down the line perhaps to be able to have at least some, if not all of the material delivered in people's mother tongues for the students? And also tech barriers of, you know, technology and internet access, etc. Have you guys got kind of thought about that, sort of obviously in the South African context with all the sort of issues that we face in schools?
Yes, thanks very much for that, Haley. So this is very much a phase one of the launch of the program. But in our partnership with the Western Cape Education Department, we have identified a certain set of schools. A number of them, especially in the Cape Town Metro, are quintile 3 schools, but are schools that we have identified that can do the program. But I think the next stage, the next phase, as we scale up and roll out and, you know, come to terms or, you know, meet reality in South Africa, definitely in terms of how we work with communities to try and make sure that they have sufficient access, or if not, are complemented by a really fantastic textbook that will, you know, not lead to any kind of difference in learning experience, and then also address the language barrier as well to make sure that the learners engage in the way that they do best, and the way that they can learn best and grow as much as possible.
May I add something there?
Sure.
Because it's a great question, and it's a question specifically pertinent in the South African context, well, in the African context, actually. And I think that there will be some struggling with technology, and we have done the lessons, as Mitchell said, as a textbook, and lesson plans where a teacher could go in with a lesson plan and actually just work in the classroom and get the same outcome, not necessarily doing it on a technology base. So I think that that's going to be an interesting input and to see how it works. And I think to your language story, it's also an interesting one. And I think as we go and we co-create, that's where I would also see where language has to become more important, and looking at it in specific languages or parts of it in mother tongue, as you say. So I think there's a co-creation that we will look at there.
Agreed. All right, I don't see any other hands. Are there any other comments or questions that anyone has? Bear in mind, a number of them will be addressed as well in the training as we get into the nitty-gritty of how it'll run. But I'll give this opportunity if there are any other questions, please let me know, please raise your hand. But you know, I just want to use this opportunity as we wrap up to really, you know, a huge vote of thanks to Ismail for working with us and being incredibly innovative and foxy to identify the opportunity here to work with us and roll out the program across various parts of the province. And then, of course, to Nedbank and the MTO group for coming on board as financial sponsors to really enable this program to hit the ground running and make a tangible difference in a lot of young learners' lives. And so I'll leave it there. If there's any other questions, any other comments, you're welcome to email me, mitch@growingfoxes.com. All of the information is also available on our website, growingfoxes.com. And, you know, hopefully this is a start of great things to come. And I'll leave you with our familiar now catchphrase, which is, may the fox be with you. Thanks all.
Thank you, Mitch, and thank you to the subject advisors and the teachers for attending this afternoon session.
Great. Thank you very much, Mitch. Thank you very much, Ishmael, and everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.